you doing, guys? Today I am continuing some work on the electric start Briggs motor. I'll be back on my senior in the next couple weeks just because I'm kind of excited, focused on this little thing, and I'm taking a little break from the senior itself. Today I am going to go ahead and glass bead the block and the head so that way it's nice and clean. The tins, I will glass bead those and paint those white at some point in time, just not today. So what I've done thus far is I went ahead, taped off and filled in areas with paper towels, areas that I don't want the glass bead to actually etch. Now, glass bead and dirt is going to go inside the motor. There's just no way around it. So just want to protect those areas that I don't want it to be actually physically etched. Everything else I can wash out. One of the things I do, especially with like this, I don't want to say cheap aluminum, but this softer style aluminum that Briggs used, I went ahead and just threaded some screws into all the threads so that way I know it's not the glass bead's not going to butcher the threads in any shape. I will be careful in these areas that I don't really shoot the glass bead right into the threads, but for the most part, everything is plugged up all the way around, so we can get that done. The head, I'm going to do the same thing with the head. I just got a junk spark plug that threaded in there so I can save the threads. This is a piece of quarter 20 rod just to be thrown in there. But outside of that, I'm going to go ahead and get the sandblaster out and we'll get this stuff glass beaded. Everything is glass beaded and looks great. You know, obviously there's some tarnishing from the years on the aluminum, but it doesn't really matter. I didn't glass bead the governor arm. That is steel, so I just taped that off and left it alone. I am going to just lightly scuff it, and I'll paint it white when I paint the tins for the motor, because I am going to leave the block aluminum. The base, the head, everything is going to be raw aluminum, but I will paint the tins of the motor white. I'll paint this one governor arm white, so that way it looks the part on the rug, because eventually, or hopefully, if everything comes out okay, this engine's going to end up on my rug carpet cut. Next up, before I go ahead and wash the block thoroughly, is I'm going to get my wire wheel on my Dremel and I'm going to go ahead and clean out the ports. I might even get out the, actually I'm going to turn this up. I might even get out the sanding drum, and that ledge that you see right there, I might just round that off. I'm not going to port it or anything like that, because that, you know, porting an engine that requires the air to go down the carburetor, across, back down, another 90 degree into the exhaust, into the valve, then another 90 degree into the port, into the not the port but the cylinder. You know, if airflow is totally compromised. So, but I think the big shelf right there, I am going to go ahead and smooth that out. I don't think the exhaust port really has a whole lot. There's really no work that can be done on the exhaust port, but I'll probably go ahead. I'm definitely going to go ahead and wire wheel this all out with the Dremel, clean it all up, everything, and then I might just hit it with the sanding drum in a couple of spots just to smooth out a couple things. So let me go ahead and get that done. I'll take everything down to my big tub sink downstairs, wash everything with some good dish soap and hot water, and then I'll let it air dry off, and then the next thing right there, we're going to start honing the bore. Now that the ports have been cleaned, and I did some, on the intake, I did some very minor porting on it. I mean, I would even call it porting. You can still see the shelves there, but the ridge is all gone. Next up, if you don't I mean, if you work on small engines on a regular basis, like I do, you know, I'll do 2 or 3 engines a year, full rebuilds. You really want to get one of these New Way valve cutting tools. Saves you a ton of money, number one. Number two, it really, in my opinion, makes the job a lot better. So I went ahead, took the 45-degree cutter. I barely touched the intake seat already. I'm set up for the exhaust. And if I take the intake valve, the new intake valve, and we'll go over the parts that in another video, I'll show you all the parts that I bought for this engine. This thing, I think, I don't know if we're going to be able, yeah, there's a little bit of light showing here and there. Oh, actually, it's not all the way in. There it is. So with a good lap, that's going to seal awesome. And then I can show you a little trick that I do with these Briggs and Stratton engines. That'll be coming in the next video. So I'm going to go ahead and I got the pilot in the, actually I've got to set that in there. There we go. The pilot's in the guide. I am going to get the cutter and just lightly hit that exhaust seat with the cutter. I'll make sure that everything lines up fairly well with the valve. And then we're going to move on to going ahead with the bore. With the intake valve lapped, we can take a look and see where it hits. It hits pretty good. I mean, it strikes the seat in a pretty good spot. It's not right on the edge, it's just on the inside of the edge. I'll be honest, I wish it was a little further into the face of the valve, but it is what it is. It's not on the very, very edge, so we're good there. The seat looks really good. So let me show you a trick that I do in order to see how we are sealing and whether or not the valve needs more lapping or if we have to break out the New Way cutter and cut it just a hair. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this flashlight on, okay? And then we take the valve, we're going to carefully slide the valve in. There we go. Now everything's super clean. Like I clean the seat and I clean the back of the valve, and then we close the valve and we look for any light that may be protruding. Now we can go even further if we want. Turn the lights off in the shop. So, and then you can see that, you know, there's light, right? So we close that and give it just a little bit of a push. I'm just barely pushing. The spring will give you more push or more seat pressure than my thumb will, but if we just hold it and we look around, there's no light. There you go. There's no light. So that tells me that that valve seat is sealing. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing for the exhaust valve. I've already started to lap the exhaust valve. I just haven't finished it. So I'm going to go ahead, finish up that, and then we're going to I've bolted it to the board here, the engine block that is, to get ready to start honing this thing out, the 10 thousandths that we need. Okay, with the engine lag bolted to the board and the board pinched or clamped to my workbench, I have the engine now in or at least the cylinder in an up and down angle, so that way I can hone it up and down and not, like, you know, front to back if it was up on my workbench. I don't want to do that. So that's all. The bore is all wiped out and clean and ready to be starting to be honed. I'm going to be using an old Craftsman stone hone. I'm not going to use a dingleberry hone. This will give me the best fighting chance to keep the cylinder as straight as possible. Here is the new 10-over piston. If we go like this, the piston doesn't fit, which is exactly how we want it. I have already taken some preliminary measures of the bore itself. The spec for the bore factory is 25615 to 25625. So when I measure it out, it's actually really, this is an anomaly. That 20 is wrong, but it actually measured out, and this is wrong too. This has got to be wrong down at the base because it's smaller than factory. But if we take a look at it, it's pretty much right around the stock size. But we have those scores in the bore, so we got to get rid of the scores. That's what the necessity is to do the oversized piston. Usually, in my historical, examples of doing this, I would usually bore to the piston. So take the piston measurement and then bore or hone out the cylinder to the size of the piston. But looking online, a lot of people say don't do that with a Briggs and Stratton engine or one of these aluminum block engines. Bore it to the actual 10 over spec. So that would be 25725 as the max and 25715 as the minimum. So we're going to shoot for those numbers right there. I did measure the piston, but I didn't write it down. So I apologize, but obviously the piston is just a little bit smaller than 715. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and set up the drill with the stone hone. I got my bore gauge, I got my micrometer. We're going to start honing this cylinder out, and we're just going to do it really slow, real methodical. I'll do like maybe 2 or 3 test swipes, and then I'll clean the bore, and then I'm going to measure the top, the middle, and the bottom in 2 planes with the crankshaft and then perpendicular to the crankshaft, and see how much material is actually removed just with like maybe, like I said, maybe 2, 3 to up to 5 strokes, so I can get a feel of what the bite is. Little status update here. It's honing actually quite well. I don't know if you can see now. You can see the scores, but they're significantly less. A lot of the scores over on this side are gone. The big scores right here are just barely there. They look more worse by this flashlight than they really are. And we're getting to the point now where the piston, see there's like a little bevel. The bevel is going into the block, and we're actually starting to feel that this thing is starting to go in. It's just right there, and this is the position that it's going to go in, because there's the pin, and I'm going to set it up so the lettering is straight up and down. But if we take this and we turn it 90 degrees, it's actually almost ready to start to slide in the bore. So we're getting there, and everything's looking really, really good. Once I get the piston to kind of slide, just gently, barely slide into the bore, I'll start taking a lot more measurements on a more consistent manner. I just did a measurement just before this hone, and everything was looking good. The bore is still fairly straight. And when I say fairly, I mean maybe half a thousandth this way, half a thousandth that way, nothing that's going to be material. So let me just continue doing this, and let's get that piston in there. Unfortunately, I had to stop with the honing process because my honing stone broke, and I wasn't going to try to Mickey Mouse it. So I just called up my best friend, Jeff Bezos, and he's supposed to drop me off a new cylinder hone this afternoon. So we're going to continue, but as you can see, that hone is coming out quite good. Most of those scores, you can still see them, but they're so minute. And the way I just measured the bore, I'll show you in a second, but it looks like all these scores will be gone once I'm finished honing it. So basically right now on average we're at 2.5640. This guy was a little bit smaller, but in general we're going for 25715. So we got a little ways to go, but I think a couple things. One, with new stones, not these worn out stones, but a new set of 220 stones, the honing is going to increase, the speed of the honing is going to increase. Number one. Number two, I think it's going to give a better overall crosshatch finish. So I'm real happy with that. And the piston just starts to slide in here. We're about 3 thousandths too tight on the bore right now for the piston to completely slide in, but we're right there. I was looking for like a skirt, a skirt clearance. Now there really isn't one for Briggs and Stratton. Like I said earlier, bore to 10 thousandths and then shove the piston in. But then I was taking a look at an old Clinton book. Obviously, Clintons were cast iron, not aluminum. Same with the Kohlers, the cast iron, not aluminum. But I was taking a look at those books, and they're either they're like 3 to 5 thousandths. That was what the clearance was for those engines. If we take the piston, the 10 over piston diameter, okay, and we subtract it from this right here, okay, I don't have that diameter right there, it works out to be about 3.5 to 4 thousandths. So I'm gonna try for about 4 thousandths clearance between the piston and the bore, and then obviously we'll end gap the rings. But that just happened about an hour ago. I ordered the new hone from Jeff just a few minutes ago, and supposedly it's supposed to be here by the end of the day. We might actually be able to finish this thing. All right, guys, I will be back when the hone shows up. The new hone worked really well. It really, it didn't really, I don't want to say it dug in, but it definitely started to remove more material quicker than my old hone. And I'll just shine this light in there, and you can see all of those gouges that used to be there are gone. Top, bottom, everything. There's a little bit of a buffing in the hone right here, and there's a couple little light marks at the top. You can't even feel them. That was from me sliding the rings into the bore to see what the end gaps were. The oil control ring was 20 thousandths, and the middle ring and the top ring measured out at 22 thousandths end clearance. Now, the book says that 35 thousandths end gap for the top two rings is the reject, and 45 thousandths is the reject for the oil control ring. So we're well within those numbers. But I am contemplating whether or not I want to get another ring set and see if I can have a little bit tighter ring end gaps for, better performance, a little more compression. But in general, that's all. The boring, or the honing, if you want to call it, is finished. We finished out pretty darn close to the tight end of the 10 over, which is 25715. We got what? 2711, we're even. In the middle, it's a little tighter. That could have been, I was having problems measuring it, but it's right there, and then we're right back. So it may not be perfectly straight, but the piston slides up and down, no problem. I know there's some heat expansion and all that other stuff, but the piston slides down the bore, up and down, without any problems. Not even a hint of binding. So we should be good there. And that is part of the reason why I'm contemplating on whether or not I want to get another ring set and make the rings a little tighter, the end gaps, because I don't want it to I don't want the ring bind to happen, because that'll be catastrophic with one of these engines. So I'm still debating on what I want to do. I was hoping it would be more like about 15 thousandths, 12 to 15 thousandths on the end gap. We're a little bit bigger than that, but we're still well within specification for this motor. So I don't know. I'll figure that out over the next couple days. But the bore's done. The valve seats have been cut. The valves have been lapped. So we're all good there. Parts are starting to come in fast and furiously. We have, let's see here. This is the ring set. This is the piston. We have a new rectifier. We have two new valve springs. There's both the oil seals for the crank are in there. The connecting rod showed up. This, I had that clutch in the shed, so I got that. This is a new throttle plate control. I'll show you that once it comes. And then the 2 new NOS valves. I'm going to reuse the lifters because they're in great shape. I'm going to reuse the spring keepers. They're in great shape. Obviously, I'm going to reuse the camshaft. The gasket kit, kind of interesting. I was looking around for a gasket kit for this engine, and I was like, well, you know what? Let me go downstairs. Well, lo and behold, I had enough gaskets from all different kind of gasket kits. In order to, I have all the gaskets for this motor. They're all right here. Ranging from the head gasket to the base plate. I mean, I got everything. So we worked out that. I might get a new stator. I don't know yet. I'll have to play around with that, but that's at a later date. Oh, and then I got the new ignition module, so it's right there. So basically, I have everything brand spanking new. Next up, we're going to set in the next video, not this one, but we'll go ahead and set the valve lash in the motor. We'll pull the crank out. Pull the crank out of the parts washer. We're going to clean that up, polish it all up, get that done. And then when it comes to the tins, I got to go ahead. I got to start pulling these all apart. I'm going to sandblast them, clean them, because I'm going to paint them all white. Right now, my want is to have all the tins painted white, and I'm going to leave the engine block, the head, and the pan raw aluminum. So it'll look really cool. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. Well, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate all your support. Thank you for your subscriptions. Thank you for your comments. Please like and share the video if you would, please. That'd be greatly appreciated. And as always, until the next crazy little engine project, you have a great day.